sorry, just we record these. If you're new to the after town halls, we record them for people who can't participate in them, and also to just log what decisions we make and be able to look back at our progress. So great. So we have a really big room today, and that's fantastic. It's what we hope, and this group is growing, and it makes a lot of sense since it's assessment time. But really what the goal is of coming together here is that we work collectively to sense our own challenges and then to make improvements to those. And then also it's very positive for us to be able to collaborate with other stakeholder groups. So that is the announcement that I made today, which is that Mercy and I will hold this joint group next time, because we're a really important part of the process as the assessors. The proposals come in, proposers submit the proposals, we provide this feedback, and really our responsibility is to the voters. So as we complete this process, we really have to keep that in mind. And a lot of what's here now that you're experiencing has been built and added to by CAs of the past and vCAs of the past they're still vCAs and CAs, but it happened in the past. So hopefully we hope that as you come in and you have enjoyed that you'll start to join and get involved in creating an even more efficient and welcoming and understandable and accessible process. So some of this for you, those of you who are new, I remember when I first started coming into after town halls, I was like, holding on to my seat, trying to understand what was going on. So if you have that feeling today a little bit, when we get into some of the different discussions about the vCA process, it's totally fine, because it'll just through osmosis, you'll start to make sense. You'll start to have the experience of it. So don't worry if you don't maybe grasp everything in this meeting, but what we want to do is continue our improvements that we've been talking about over the past funds, and also give some space for us to be able to reflect on how this time has gone and what things we could do to make it better for future groups. So that's just a little bit of a preface. And it's really tough for me to talk and monitor the chat at the same time. So I'm hoping that, I know everyone who's in here, if you can just give feedback where it's easy. And if someone's question doesn't get answered, please shout it out, because I have not mastered splitting my consciousness yet on multiple things. If anyone knows how to do that, I'd appreciate it. Okay. So two things that we need to at least give attention to today are, well, three things really. Number one is we want to just make some space for talking about things that we've noticed. If the thing that you have noticed has been talked about in a channel that you're in, the odds are very good that I have logged it, because I've been monitoring and logging those chats so that we have a collection of these issues, large and small. Something as annoying as you click the next button in idea scale and it doesn't submit your assessment, you lose a draft, all the way up to how should we address things like being thoughtful about assessing individually proposals where there's a lot of different ones or there's similar ones, right? So these are things that we're logging. So we have a little bit of space to bring those up here, but I might also, out of interest of the time, say this is logged and we're going to talk about that further in a future session. And then we're going to talk about just maybe putting the button on the vCA guide. The vCA guide exists, like all of you have experienced the community advisor guide. So that's the second thing that we'll address. And then thirdly is we are in a continued discussion about maybe adding a little bit of a more formalized process for reviewing these flagged and filtered assessments over time, so that we can have fairness and transparency in that process. That's probably the most governance complex conversation that we're going to have today. So I put all these things on the table to say, maybe what we'll do is spend maybe the first 10 or 15 minutes just making some space for anything that you feel you want that needs to be brought up, maybe an open discussion for things that are really important to make sure we have added, and then we'll move into some of those other topics. And I'll bring up the agenda here so that we can sort of keep focus on it if that works. Okay, does that make sense? Any questions on that? Okay, thank you, Merrick. Merrick notes that idea scale has not fixed a lot of these issues yet, so for next time. Next
Yeah,
time, Eric.
I have a call with them next week, so it won't be fixed by the Friday. So sorry.
Yeah, Phil, might never. Hopefully we get some of these things addressed. The things that we can't change, we try to make a heads up for the future. And the things that we can change, we try to change. So some of those things, idea scale is a third-party solution. So for any of you who have idea scale issues, we don't have a lot of control over it, and making even small changes to it can be complicated. So that would open a whole discussion about idea scale as a tool. Let's not do that today, because it's a much larger discussion, but these small things are not easy to just, switch, and we don't have control over them. So to Marek's point, you're not going to see a lot of these fixes happen immediately for this, certainly not for this fund. Okay. So I'm just gonna open the floor here and we'll see what happens. Okay, Naveed, do you want to bring that up since you're putting it in the chat? Oh yeah, let's start with William here, and then Naveed, if you want to talk about that, put your hand up and we'll get you next. Go ahead,
By
William.
all means, if whoever had wanted to speak, I can wait. That's fine. I'll put my hand down. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Naveed.
Hi. On multiple channels, people would have seen lots and lots of, it might be quite boring conversations, but anyway, about this particular text I put in the chat on proposals and how they should be assessed. So it says each proposal should be considered as an individual piece of work. Comparing one proposal over another is not best practice. So what we have seen in several instances is similar proposals. Therefore, the CAs have been asking, what do we do? All we can do is write similar assessments. So we're potentially going to see assessments that are 80, 90% plus similar. So I just wanted to get, there's different views from different people on various chats about how you should respond, and whether the CA guide is a rule or just a guideline, and how this might affect their rewards, and what VCAs might think, whether the similarity analysis tool will filter them out, and lots of people getting very excited about it.
So sorry, Phil, just as etiquette because there's so many of us, if you have something to say, just throw your hand up, do your raised hand thing. Try not to physically throw your hand up, but in the bottom, if you're newer to Zoom, you have the reactions button and you just put your hand up, and that's how we'll monitor.
I think the intention of that phrase is the idea that different people, you might have one problem that's presented, but different people will, and different projects and different teams will approach the solution to that in a different way. Given that we're operating in a open and permissionless system, two projects like ATH that we got presented today and ADA Handle can approach the same concept with two different solutions, and the ecosystem over time will continue to grow to cater to those solutions. So the idea behind that, the way that's worded, I believe, is that you can present a solution to a problem, and your team and your budget and your way of executing will be different to the next one. So when we're assessing these as CAs, the fact that there's two projects both addressing the same issue, it's not a judgment of which project we prefer better. It's a assessment against the guidelines. So that's what we're doing as CAs at this point. You as a voter can have your own opinion, choose which project you like, support both, support neither, but that's not what we're doing as CAs.
William.
Thank you. So I put together a quick list that I wrote just before the meeting that we had. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen and we'll take a look. Does that sound good to everyone?
I'm not
Or
sure.
should I just, I'll just read it off. I can read it off.
You can read it off. You know what? I don't know
Sure.
if you share your screen because, and I can't make you a host from within here. So if you could read it off.
Okay,
Great.
sure, no problem. So just a few things that I've noticed off the bat. This is my first round in being a CA. The issues that stand out have to do with there being a ton of complexity, a lot of reading having to be done without giving any examples. I'm saying I'm not going to give any examples or point any fingers or anything like that. It's not necessary. More so it's about the transparency that comes with a 1.5 to 2 minutes presentation of an individual that shows how they're going to give deliverables and what they're about, what their experience is, perhaps what their accolades are and their achievements. These things show me the green light. So if you want to know how to distinguish between the proposals, it's really important to look at how transparent someone's being. Are they trying to hide themselves behind a lot of resume? I'm not saying that's the motive, but it could be if the motive is money, and it's often an indicator. We're at this point right now, I'm saying I see Cardano as a seed, and we need to provide all of the nutrients to this seed so that it reaches that tree of life that we saw at the summit in September of last year. It's that really important element. So I'll just go through a few things that I had written down. It's the idea that the squeaky wheel gets the oil. We all know this. However, all of the wheels need to get oil to begin with. It's this idea that proactivity is much better than being reactive. And if I'm going too long, just stop me in my tracks because I have a few things, but I'll try to deliver this quickly. My profession is I'm a writer. So I'm looking all the time at how can I reduce the complexity of what I'm saying to a level of a 3rd or 4th grade reader so that it's totally clear, it's totally understandable, and I know exactly what this group or individual is setting out to do and accomplish. And that can be done no matter how technical your proposal is. So as I'm responding right now, I'm saying, listen, break this down in a video so I can see your face, so I can see what's going on, so I know exactly what you're into right now and what I can expect to see at the end. And if someone gives any resistance to that whatsoever, it's an immediate red flag. So I'm looking for that right now to see how people are responding to the way that I'm giving feedback, which is to say, just be transparent. Give me a video. It takes 5 minutes if you got a cell phone, or put some audio out there. Let me see your face. Let me see the team. And let me see what's going on with current production. If anyone's coming forward trying to say, hey, listen, I need this cash so I can buy some equipment, red flag right away. Everything should be available right now to produce that which you're looking to present at the end with deliverables. So a couple things. We're visual learners, so it's important to have a video. I always look for the videos, and whenever I see them, it's usually where I start to give the higher ratings, because I know right away these people have no problem being transparent. And that is actually more important to me than if they've been funded since Fund 3. Honestly, it's more important. You want to provide quality products and services because this will be reflected in the compensation you're asking for. Compensation is directly related to service. It doesn't matter how you look at it, what field you're coming from. If you're looking to earn a certain amount of money, that's not the way to be looking at it. You should be looking at how you're going to serve Cardano, the seed that we're trying to build moving forward.
Do you feel,
Go ahead.
William, that these are statements towards a proposer? Because this group so it sounds to me, I'm hearing you say we need ease of understanding and visuals and a different level of quality from the proposers. I'm wondering if we shouldn't involve you more in the process of thinking about, which is something that's going to happen after this fund too, in the process of thinking of how proposers can be more successful in, especially considering your experience, rather than in how we are assessing them following, because there is the assessment criteria. So help me understand that so that we can make sure that it is things that this group can address.
Sure. I guess what I'm trying to accomplish and what I'm saying, and thank you for your question, I need to be just more brief with it, I think, is how can we discover transparency versus something that's occult, right? Motivations. There's only 2 motivations that are going to come in with proposals. Motivation for money or motivation for innovation. That's it. That's what I'm looking for. If someone's coming in motivated for money, which will happen. I can say I was one with Fund 4. I'll be totally transparent. I was thinking, okay, how can I make a good living with this for the rest of my life or whatever it is? It's not the right way to look at this because this is not the season for harvest. It's obviously not. So what I'm trying to communicate right now is how can things be noticed? And if I would rather err on the way of caution than to just give a green light to everyone for the sake of love and abundance and growth, because not everyone's that way. And that just comes from the school of hard knocks, learning that.
Your concern is how do we make, how it's really beyond a feasibility and impact. It's an intent thing that you're raising here. Yeah. I think that's, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Nadia, please.
I think that's something that definitely this group shares and is focused on, certainly. And so do you have specific things that you'd like to raise as far as ways that you think that we could accomplish that? And we also could take that into further discussions, because it really is a process discussion and a preparation discussion at the proposals level that also will then filter into how we look at that content once it's created in the proposer.
Sure. I think we could do the same type of meeting and vet individual cases. So do case studies and to show what has happened over the course of someone getting funding and what has happened with the deliverables or not. So look at the failures really more than anything else, because from the failures, we can start to develop strategies how to convert those into successes. I want to see success around the board, 100%.
Yeah.
And so that's really where my focus is. I think we can do that on a case-by-case basis, run a few pilots and see what the result is. So we can all come together and say, what is the feedback that we need to give this proposer? And really at the end of the day, it's going to come down to motivating the person to produce a video. I really think that's because that becomes a form of vetting through the interview process. And if we need more, we push the person until they either break or they succeed. Because we should be reinforcing individuals that propose based on meritocracy, not based on nepotism and not based on track record. It's what they can do and what they're doing now. That's the most important thing. If we can reinforce a meritocracy, we will succeed. That's how I see it. Thank you for listening. I can go on, but I think that's basically the gist.
You're very welcome, and I can anticipate that you will be enlisted for future conversations on this, certainly, and that it will be really enriching for you as well, because it sits in your heart. So
It is.
I'm gonna keep just allowing the rest of the hands here, and then please chime in as you feel good. And I've noted some of these, and we'll make sure we have you involved in the continuing conversations about it. Is that good?
Thank you for listening to me and giving me a voice today. I'm grateful to you. Thank you.
Yeah. I also just want to make space. I'm going to move on to the next hands here, but Naveed, do you feel like that we addressed your question? Was there any other comments on what Naveed originally brought up there? I'm going to keep going, but if that happens, we can also come back to it. J-O-8-N and 8-O-J.
Yeah, hello. I'm a proposer, so I'm gonna try to keep this quick and on topic, but in the miscellaneous challenge, I had this proposal where I just used emojis and I just did like $1, and it was kind of supposed to be a ticket for a video also on the proposal, but it got moved to the archive stage instead of assess, which is understandable because it probably looked like spam, but it was an experiment, and I would like to keep going with it in the assess stage, but I don't know if that's possible to move it back.
I think we chatted about this in Discord, Joe.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But I would like to get a little discussion.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I?
Marek's got something on this, yeah.
Yeah, so from IDSK admin, let's say IDSK admin perspective, this proposal was not finished. And as a proposer, we had 3 weeks to make it, make the final proposal out of the draft. and we have these prerequisites to allow proposal to get to the assess stage and then to get to the ballot. One of them is requesting more than $1 for funds. So automatically, if proposal requests $0 or $1, it will be put it in the archive stage. The same for the answers. If there will be like one-word answers for questions, auditability, feasibility, we will archive this as well, because it is not finished proposal. It is not final project. It is a test, and we are archiving all tests, all placeholders, all, I don't know even how
I
to.
mean, there's a whole video though it's a ticket for. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, you're not gonna get the video then. I mean, I guess that's what it is. You never told me $1 is not allowed as well. What's the difference between $1 and $2? Makes no sense.
Because no one is basically asking for $2. People are putting 0 or 1 if they are preparing their projects to make it proper value at the end of finalized stage.
I think with John's
I
example,
don't.
he used a bunch of, he's kind of testing out the process, right? And he's used icons to say words instead of actually highlighting words. So there's an element of his proposal that is very interesting, and it brings up a bunch of issues that are beyond just the administration side of this. So
I mean, it's in the miscellaneous as well.
yeah,
Okay, there we go.
and like I described to you, John, it kind of is in line with when we were working on the miscellaneous challenge. I proposed a random and wacky challenge that got merged with miscellaneous. So
Okay.
It kind of fits within that kind of off the wall weird thinking. What can we do with Cardano that's not in line? But just appreciate that there's a whole system that by putting that proposal through, there's a lot of manpower that would have gone into reviewing it, assessing it, voting on it. And it's been filtered out because of that system that would have let through a whole bunch of proposals that may not have been a test, like in your case. So it, if anything,
but I'm here.
Can we let, I think Danny's got his hand up. Danny, you want to comment on this since you're looking at it?
Oh,
Yeah, just real quickly, I think it speaks to two things, and one which we already started to having the conversations on, because I think this is a great opportunity to follow up on what we chatted earlier as well, that we've given a lot of love as of recent to revamping the community advisor guidelines. Now we're focusing a bit on the vCA guidelines, but I think there's a great opportunity to also now jointly looking forward in the next couple of weeks or so to revamp the proposer guidelines as well, so that it's a bit more clear, because I think John is not alone in that case. I think there were a number of cases in a similar like scenario where they've had different expectations than what essentially transcribed, and I think that is an important point that we need to address collectively. And I think revamping the proposers guidelines, which actually have not been really touched for quite a while now, because we've been so focused on the SS and QA and all of that, but I think now comes the time that allows us to actually start looking into that part of it as well. So that like cases like, when John comes along, he has a really good understanding of like whether he should or not spend the time on it. But like just one quick thing, just in this specific example, it will be also very difficult to acknowledge what it is. So I opened the link, I see the emojis, I see that there is some experiment going on, but even the video which is attached, just for your reference, John, is private. So
that's on purpose.
That's the point.
It's a ticket.
Okay.
It's like yeah, I mean,
yeah, and what I mean,
I see
by
why
that
it's
is
hard to understand, but hold on. I don't really care about all the CA manpower and all that stuff. I just want to get to the vote. Like, you guys could all give it zeros, and as long as I get to the vote, I think that's fair. I don't see why it should be archived without any no one talked to me. I didn't put withdraw. Like, I understand where you guys are coming from, but I just think, why shouldn't I be disallowed from the vote process?
So you mentioned in the Discord as well that you were interested in going through the process.
Yes.
Try to think of this as part of the process. So there's a whole
No,
so I'm not saying that what's happened to you is necessarily ideal, but maybe look to Fund 9 to resubmit it with a new understanding of what's happening, and we can try to make sure that things are better communicated in Fund 9 so that this sort of stuff doesn't happen. Well, one of the slides that we get every town hall is things may break. I would take this as an example of
my issue right now, I understand, but there's still time left. I don't get it. Like, there's still 2 days to assess. Why can't it be moved? I'm asking you guys, like,
So like
in
for
the
the
video.
practical, just so that we come to some agreement in here, why that's not happening. Once the
Yeah.
assess stage begins, that produces a fixed set of proposals, which are then distributed throughout the ecosystem to all the CAs. So it's no longer possible to go in reverse and actually edit those documents because they're snapshots sort of in time, so that everybody has the same chance and everybody's working on the same set of the information, which then sort of transcribes the fairness and all of that with it. So it's not possible then to go and insert things, because even when later on, when everything is more aligned with the chain, we need to get used to the fact that when certain deadlines come across, we need to respect them collectively, because once this will be on chain and there will be really no way of moving things back and forth for real. So that's an expectation of having those deadlines being in place so that we can make transition changes from point A to point B. And editing those databases basically corrupts them, and we no longer have the same information spread across all the different people that are reviewing these documents as such. So it may sound trivial in terms of like, oh, it's just moving it from one stage to another. We're no longer in idea scale as such on that stand, and we can't just be moving the proposals back and back into the mix once they've been archived.
I completely disagree, to be honest, but okay. I don't know the technical aspects, so that's why I'm asking, I guess. I just, like, it's attached to my other proposal too, though, is the thing. Like, it's, I don't know. I put in some time. I know it doesn't look like it, but it just is pretty disappointing. And I don't honestly understand why that can't be moved still. I mean, your explanation was very wordy and I don't get it.
So in a couple of words as such, so it's not wordy. It's technically not feasible for us to do it at this present time because it affects a lot of pieces in the pipeline and all the people which are actually associated with it. So technically we just can't do that. I'm sorry.
So John,
Okay, so next time, what should I do different though? That's the issue.
Excuse me, we need to move on. We can't dominate the meeting. I'm sorry, I apologize.
so John,
No problem.
I'm sure that's not the answer that you're looking for, but you are very positively influencing the process here, and this will be something that we get for in the coming fund.
Yeah, I'll submit it next one. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Harsha, please correct me if I pronounce anyone's names wrong.
I just wanted to bring back the discussion to a couple of things that William was talking about how you need to evaluate the intent behind the proposal. And some things he mentioned was that a 4-year-old should be able to understand the proposal. And to be fair, proposal writing is an art in itself, and not everyone is a naturally English-speaking proposer. So making it simple is not as simple as it seems. So that is one thing. And another one is visual learning is everyone's thing, but visual learning is not everyone's thing. Like, different people learn differently. And also creating a video in itself is something that people need to learn how to do. It's so there might be a brilliant programmer who doesn't know how to make videos. So in that case, it's hard to evaluate that. And one more thing, I completely forgot the last thing I wanted to talk about, but that's all I had to say.
May I respond to that, if that's okay, since it has to do with what I said?
Yes, quickly.
Okay. Yeah, it is a definite challenge. You know, it's a lifelong process of reducing something that's complex to a simple fourth grade reading level, but that is the average reading level of everyone on the internet. It's fourth grade. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, that's how it has to be tailored if it's going to be well received. And, you know, this applies to John's proposal, just what he was talking about. I just looked at it. It's incomprehensible. It is. For me, it's incomprehensible. And it's a mess. So I'm just going to say it, you know, it needs to be reduced. So if that's the case, we can talk about this openly and honestly right now. Utilize me. I write every day. I do this as a profession, and I can help people with the editing process, with the clarification process, until it reads well. And this is what
Okay.
writers do naturally. So
William, I'm
by all
sorry,
means.
I have to interrupt you. These are
Sure.
these are statements for proposers. We're in
Yeah.
we're in the CA group now. So we just, I
Forgive
totally,
me.
I agree and respect everything that's being talked
Yeah.
about here.
Yep.
And this should move maybe even into next week's conversation.
Sure.
But right now we have a lot today. So
Totally.
I appreciate those comments, and I want to just make space for, I'm going to do a last call for, have your hand up now, not for you, Tom, I'm getting to you, but just last call for anyone who has a sensed issue, because after Tom or anyone who puts their hand up right now, we're going to move into the other stuff. Okay. So, Danny, do you still have your hand up? Are you wanting to say something? Okay, thanks. Tom, thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. It's very nice to meet everybody. I'm Tom from Arizona. I got a question that's actually kind of important to me. I've gone through all the materials. I've searched online. I've gone through the history of the meetings. But I have a proposer who has submitted multiple proposals for this funding round. They're in different categories. Some of them are in anyway, different categories. However, his proposals, or his and hers proposals, kind of walk hand in hand. So let's say out of the 4 proposals that they made that are in different areas in the funding round, if any one of those proposals are denied, then all of the proposals will fail. So it's kind of like it's not a 4-legged chair where you could shift your body weight if one of them falls out. If the one leg falls out, it's like a 3-legged stool. If one leg falls out, the whole project crashes. So I'm more than willing to evaluate it. I've actually been studying it pretty good. But the problem is that how do I relay? I understand that we have to evaluate each proposal based on its own merits. But like I said, the problem is that if one proposal doesn't get funded and the other 3 or only 2 get funded, the whole thing's a wash. So how do I relay that information to the reviewers that, hey, you need to take a look at this one also and this one, because they walk hand in hand with each other?
This is a great question, Tom. And Marek, you have your hand up. Are you wanting to respond to this? No. Okay, I'm going to leave some space for the vCAs and for you guys. Phil, are you wanting to respond to this?
Yeah, I can respond to this. Tom, part of the proposal guidelines is that each proposal has to be able to stand on its own merit. So if you're proposing across multiple challenges, each relying on each other, that's not participating as intended, as far as I'm aware, which means that I would say the feasibility part of that proposal falls down. So that if I was assessing such a proposal myself, I would be following that through. And then in the assessment, I would link through the various other proposals. If the proposal hasn't done that, then that probably needs to be noted as well. So it's important that each proposal and all the advice that's given around to proposers is that that's the case. It's highly advisable to split proposals up where possible into different challenges and work independently on various aspects if that's possible, because that in some ways helps one, you could fund one part in one fund and continue funding in another fund, that sort of thing. That's how I understand that the process is as intended.
Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I could make reference to that. I mean, to that point, I'll rank it on its own merits. But if one of the four fails, then we lose something like $120,000 that could have gone to another project. So
Yeah, I'll just also bring up John's writing here. This guideline was not written for this particular case. It's an older guideline that was added after a particular abuse was observed. So, and yeah, then Ilya, just explain it to the voters. It would be a feasibility thing. If anyone disagrees with that, ping me, but I think that's pretty well responded to. Thank you everyone for that. Thank you, Tom, for the question. Feel like addressed? Marek.
Hi. So the question is, as a CA, I saw that I'm not a CA, but imagine that as a CA, I see a lot of proposals that are almost identical and have been submitted by the same submitter. So can I just copy and paste my assessments to different proposals, changing only one word that is basically the difference between the proposals? And if so, will I be penalized for that, or treated as a bot for posting similar assessments? And can I answer that question?
Oh, what a great theoretical question, Marek. And I'm glad you have an answer for yourself. Go ahead.
No, you won't be penalized because we're checking similarity assessments between different assessors. So if you are going to copy and paste the same assessment and then modify them slightly so it fit proper proposal, then you won't be penalized by the script or similar assessments.
Great. Okay. JP.
Yeah, I may just challenge that that position a little bit, because I find as a vCA, it's very hard for me to go through the proposal and know that exactly which word they change, as opposed to being able to clearly see that they've cut and paste across multiple. So I'm wondering, like, what is the threshold of approved copy and pasting with editing that isn't just using the same assessment, but is different? Like, again, for example, let's just take, there's some proposals I'm doing all accelerated identity. There's the same project has 5 proposals with slightly different aspects of how the proposal meets the objective. Now, if I was in that same challenge just to copy and paste my assessments from each one, but only change that caveat to a vCA, I would feel, and as a vCA, I would flag those proposals. So I'm just nervous that could be permitting copy and pasting without clear guidance of, okay, what is enough to actually be valid for it to be a different assessment versus just a repeat. So, and I don't have an answer. That's something that as a vCA, I really struggle with. And as a CA, I've been doing, even though the proposals are the same, been doing unique assessments for each one, even though I may repeat some of the things. It's in a different format, it's in a different flow. It highlights different aspects of the proposal as opposed to copy and paste, copy and paste. So I just, maybe this conversation, is there a threshold that people use for that? For example, Marek.
Maybe it's more of a question to the vCAs, right? Because what's going to happen is they're going to use their review judgment over the proposal. So if it's really well written and it explains why you've copied and pasted, then I'd suggest that it could be good. But if it's just literally copy and paste with no explanation, maybe it's heading towards the filtered out, or maybe it's good. I mean, it's going to depend on the body of the VCAs reviewing these, and I think that's how the process is intended. So
yeah, I agree with you, Phil, and I don't think that if they do put in that extra definition, which, you know, or why they got to this for this proposal versus the other one, you know, of course they could make that case. But again, barring that case, since that's not a requirement from what I've heard, that for moving it to the next two similar proposals, it still leaves a lot of room for discretion, which isn't really a consistent way for us to apply this logic. So that's what worries me.
So maybe I'll give a little bit of context, because I see a lot of the questions in the chat. And some of the questions are, why do can we just limit proposal numbers? So some of these questions are not necessarily for this group. The adjustments to the proposing process, how many people can be on, how many you can co-propose on, how many can you be a mentor, co-proposer, proposer, how many of these are process questions that need to go also in collaboration with the proposing team. And to Danny's point in the beginning, we need to think about this from the beginning. So we're further down the line now addressing things that originated further up the line. And so we have to make decisions. One of the reasons for the similarity analysis is because we had issues in in Fund 7. This group faced a lot of issues with there being copy pasted assessments. And we had to talk a lot about, is this a novel assessment of this proposal? Did someone just take the same criteria? So this was the origin of this similarity analysis tool, so that we could make sure that people weren't gaming the system by copying and pasting over and over again, and so that we at least look at them.
Sorry, and that was across different actual assessors, right? So it wasn't just copy and pasting inside. It was for the same proposal with different assessors, but with exactly the same or very similar assessments.
So the tool, sorry, Phil. So the tool is in place that we can see those as they come through and have an easier time looking at and making decisions about, flagging them and identifying them, so that we can look into them further. And so that eliminates that way of gaming the system. In this round, we have the issue of proposals that are very similar. And so now it's just a new problem that we have here, right? That is originated. So some of this we can't solve here in this group, but we don't have any way to make a decision about the proposing process. So that's going to be a bigger discussion. But these are really relevant for how we do a good job assessing now. That's what we need to be talking about. How do we do a good job assessing these? One of John's point was copy pasting must be explained. For example, he says, my assessment for the 20 proposals of this proposal will be mostly the same, since their proposals are identical in part from X, right? So we need to at least have some little bit of group acknowledgement of how we're handling this problem real time, and then what we're going to do about it into the future is a different.
The other option maybe as a CA is just to consider just one of them and let the other CAs do the others. If you're having an issue with the fact that you're going to copy and paste and you don't want to involve yourself in that, because maybe the only real reason to do that would be, well, one, to identify that this is happening, and two, to look for rewards, maybe. So if you're not into that side of things, consider just doing one of them and pointing out that there's a lot of others, and that's why you are deciding this way, perhaps.
Okay.
I had my hand up earlier. I just wanted to had a point to what William was saying earlier. Part of this, I really enjoy the CA process, even though I struggle to actually do a large number of CAing each time because they're really time consuming, is that different people have different opinions. So William has his own way of approaching the CA. He looks for a video, he looks for engagement. That's his process. But each of us have our own individual processes. And as a collective, we come together and create better decision making. At least that's the way I see the process. So I really like hearing other people, how they engage with the process. And I love that it's progressing and growing as we go on.
Thank you, Phil. I feel like everyone's feedback is totally valuable, and it's just multiple measures. You know, I used to be a college advisor. We had multiple measures to decide things, and it always works. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, guys, I'm going to try to keep us in these next few things. We'll try to move through here. They're very important things, so we need some space to be able to get into conversation about it. The first thing is in this link here. Where did I put it? Sorry, guys, let me give you the right link. So here's the after town hall link. I should have put this there in the beginning, but it's okay because we're coming to it right now. So I'm going to put in the chat here the after town hall for today. There it is. So in this, we have, I'm going to share now my own screen. Thank you for your patience as I maneuver here. Okay, so is that working? Can you guys see the screen? So we just got this part done. So the vCA guide, can I make a suggestion? Last week we talked about trying to have that done within 5 to 7 days, which is now. Can we put like maybe, what do you think, Phil, as one of the primary authors? Can we give it like a end of day today hard stop on additional comments and contributions? And what do you think is reasonable for a timeline to have this done so that it exists for the coming vCA period?
Yeah, I think let's do that today. Let's say
or we could do
like
tomorrow morning, maybe.
Yeah, 12 hours from now, we're going to close down and pass it over to Danny and his team to look over it in IOG.
Okay.
So approximately 12 hours. So if you really want to look into it, I'll post a link in the chat. Encourage you to go and get on there, look it over, comment. Anyone who's been a VCA or is interested in the process, jump in and start to dig through it, and we'll close it down and pass it over for IOG. About 12 hours.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you for that. So I'll just let that be our conversation on that for now, and then everyone can hop in and we'll get it in the comments so we don't have to go through a lot here. So important for today is, now I have on here needs decision, and people have been asking me, why does this need a decision for this proposed process arbitration solution? Maybe the words are too wordy, right? So what we need to do is just slightly improve the process by which we make decisions about what we do with to the point of the earlier discussion we've had here, when things get flagged. So we're going to close the assessment process here at the end of the week. And then Danny and Mark will run the similarity tool. We'll get a bunch of stuff flagged. And then over the process of the VCAs looking at this, there's 2 places where it would be helpful to have we've started to call it an arbitration body, but maybe it's just like decision makers, right? Thoughtful decision makers who are for the most part able to be transparent about this, totally able to be transparent about the process, and try to figure out a way for that to be unbiased. So you shouldn't be able to make decisions about things that affect your own work. That's what that means. So the first time that happens is after that tool runs and we have assessments flagged. That means someone wrote yes, yes, yes in all the 3 fields. Someone put gobbledygook. Someone copy pasted the exact same thing over and over again without any kind of changes. The flags that are listed in the CA guide, it's going to find those things. And then a person has to look at that and say, that makes sense. That doesn't fit the criteria. Someone has to evaluate that. That's the first step here. Then the VCAs go through and look at everything. And then the VCAs, with their human eyes and their thoughtful review of the assessments, will say, okay, this is good. This is excellent. This needs to be deleted from the process. And then at the end of that process, we need a second time, a group to look at those. So there's a stopgap who can say, okay, this is the list that are in question. We need to evaluate whether these should be passed through or they should be dropped out of the process as legitimate assessments. And it's important that those 2 periods of time, or that in those 2 periods of time, that group is able to have criteria, make decisions, and come to a consensus, so that it's not just one person unilaterally having to make the decision, which is what we previously had. So I recognize that there's like a great amount of wonderful comments in this document. And some of those comments are this process should take a lot longer. It could be more complicated, less complicated. But what we'd like to accomplish here is an improvement that provides transparency that we can build on, and that would step us forward from the previous situation that is insufficient. So recognizing that, my hope is that this group can come together and look at this suggestion. We go through some of these comments and we come to a consensus on what it is that we can agree upon together here, that we can move forward, and that we can try to put this into practice here over the end of this fund, and then improve on it into the future. So I hope that gives a little bit of context. And I want to just open it up for comments, especially anyone who has commented on this document. Do we think the first question is there agreement from this group that we want to make an improvement on this process? It has been brought up in the past few after town halls. I did take it to circle. This document and this suggestion is a result of those after town hall discussions, talking to the Catalyst Circle, where the origin of the task force idea came. Then we drafted this, and then some of the people who originally were calling for this, I went back and talked to them, and now it's being shared more broadly. So I open it now for Naveed, Phil. Naveed, you're up.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify the as-is situation. So in Fund 7, with those scenarios that Nadia spoke about, it was either just left to the vCAs. So we ran the similarity tool, and then the vCAs decided whether things should be filtered out or not. But equally, in some cases, IOG, I don't know, I'm going to say Marek, but maybe a group of people in IOG got together and decided things should be unilaterally filtered out or discarded. So if there were assessments that just said yes, 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 a lot of those got filtered out, but not all of them. So it wasn't consistent. Based on the similarity assessment, a bunch got discarded, but not all of them. And a lot of those were against, that was done post vCA work, so against the vCA consensus. The ones with nonsensical assessments, for those in Fund 7, you remember that the internet repair guy who just wrote gobbledygook, they didn't get filtered, they didn't get discarded, and they just stayed through the process. So there was inconsistency. So where we're coming from is we've currently got IOG and or the VCAs reviewing and making decisions on whether unilaterally or a consensus of VCAs deciding what happens with these assessments. And it's whether we stick with that or move to something cleaner. And the idea is that the VCAs then get a subset of good assessments or cleaner assessments to assess, to review.
I think that's slightly different from this this document. I think this one's discussing the idea that after all the processes are done, the QA processes, sometimes proposals aren't happy with the results. And the history of this is that there's been requests from some proposers and other angles that say that they want some sort of body to approach to say, we don't agree with this. How do I protest? How do I get my time to say, there's no process for them at the moment. I think we tried a few bits and pieces back a few funds ago, but really there was been no process. So the idea behind this is, how can we create a body out of the community that's unbiased, that can help decide those issues?
Sorry, Nadia, can you clarify? Because I think we're on a different page. So
this is the flagging.
Proposer flags, and I'm talking about the tool flagging, similarity flags, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So this is for us to decide here. So this is what this is what we're trying to create. So either we can create a body that either we can create a body that is like a decision-making body for people to be able to come to and say, why was this made? It's helpful. My intuitive sense is that it's helpful for that body to have been involved in that process rather than otherwise it's more of a mediator body, right? So what is it that we really, I think in both cases, this process could work of getting a group together and having it, but do we want that group to do the reviews and look at what has been flagged and make the decisions? Or is that body more of a service body to the community to provide to prevent too much influence from the vCA and the decision-making body?
I think if it has no teeth, it's just a talking shop. So we may as well just leave it to the vCAs to decide.
Yeah.
If you've got a body having a look at assessments and they've been flagged, and that group does fantastic, they've been flagged, and move on to the vCA phase. The vCAs will deal with it. Just so either it has teeth and it has the authority to take some action, or it's just a talking shop.
And you also risk the reviewing, never-ending turtles down sort of concept. Sorry, JP, you had your hand up.
JP.
Yeah, I guess what I was just going to say is that I think one of the problems with creating this body is that a lot of flags that I have seen on proposals and I have addressed, I have not sided with the proposer. I have said, okay, I understand that maybe this is hypercritical and maybe they could have been a little gentler, but I don't think it undermines the assessment, the point, the review. And so I would be worried about putting people in the position where then they're actually having to make decisions on the value proposition of the proposal versus what the assessor thinks. And that's not really a role that I think we should be taking. I think a way that I would see this solution being resolved would be saying, okay, we have this flag, if it gets to a point where it goes through the CA process, the person's still irate, they don't believe it, they don't agree, then maybe there's some sort of discussion that takes place with that person, or it goes to a blind review of a set of vCAs that then say, okay, no, we side with this person over that side, which is more blind. But I think right now we're just setting up vCAs or whatever this body is to kind of be weighing in on things that I think are beyond the scope of what we want. It should go to more assessments, more reviews. If the reviews in total say yay or nay, that should be the decision. So build it into the process rather than something new.
What is the most important thing that the vCA group wants to prevent or accomplish by having a group like this? For when we originally talked about an arbitration group, it was, I think originally it was ultimately when that list comes, which happened last fund, when the list comes and we have people who we have identified, either people or groups of assessments that we've identified, and we need to decide whether or not how to address that. We need sort of a third party so that the vCAs themselves don't have the power to do that. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, if you look at the long run of this, the fundamental of this is the setting up of a judiciary, right? For a government system to work well, at least in normal operation, you need a third party arbitrator or decision maker or negotiator to essentially rule, if you're using the judgment system, on a case, right? So what in many ways, this is kind of an attempt to say, what would a judicial system in Voltaire look like? How can we start that exploration of looking at a community distributed arbitration system? and it stems from the fact that proposers may not, at least at this point where we're looking, the governance is only about proposals and looking for funding in Project Catalyst. That's the issue at hand, and all our systems are in place to deal with that. But we can see a future in that's not the only thing we're going to be judging on. There will be conflicts, there will be disagreements in the future. How do we address those? Who decides? Do we just let it laissez-faire around the place and fall where things may, and have people who are upset and disappear and give bad mouthing to everything? Or do we set up a system that we agree on and work out how to include people to participate in that system?
I'm just going to read these comments. So we have Robert says the appeals process comments on the system that produced the result, not the merits of the proposal. That's a really important point. And then Lynn says for Fund 8, he doesn't think we have time for this, but for Fund 9 and beyond, but not for Fund 8. So that's also on the table too, by Merrick. That's also on the table too. We could leave the process as it is for here, as it's been, and we could really spend some time focusing on this. We've made a lot of upgrades, so I just put that on the table as well. Maybe.
So I think there were two parts to this. There was the CA group, or the CA arbitration body, whatever you want to call them, and then the vCA piece. Maybe we have time for the vCA piece. So just looking back at Fund 7, we ran a script, and we found vCA's gaming the system very, very easy for vCA to game the system. People got away with thousands of dollars, okay, for very little work. Possibly 20 of the VCAs, up to 20 VCAs got away with thousands and thousands of dollars. If we don't do something this time, and we agree here on a recorded call that's the situation, there's nothing stopping me marking all 9,000 assessments as excellent, and there is no comeback. Mm-hmm. It'll take me 30 seconds. And that's what I'm looking to stop from a VCA point. That's where it started, and then we've got the CH. So maybe there's something we can do around the VCA piece.
Okay.
And leave the current process in place regarding the CA assessments.
So would the new VCA guidelines be laying that out so that? But then we don't have any judgment of the VCAs, right? So is that what we're referring to? That there's no way to decide on who? Yeah. So for example, if we run the script that Alex wrote and a number of other people wrote, and we find there's a huge disparity between what this VCA is doing and the rest of the cohort, so that they're so far off, then it's worth a further investigation. And that's what we did. We went in and investigated further, tried to understand what this person's doing. And in most cases, it's very simple. There's a spreadsheet, all the VCS do is go mark an X, copy and paste your X all the way down the spreadsheet, and you're suddenly up to thousands and thousands of dollars you're getting paid without any way of challenging them.
Okay.
And that's exactly right.
Great clarification, Danny.
Yeah, I think this is where I understand the first iteration of rewards slashing comes in for the VCA process. I'm not sure if that's being considered here or not, but in the Fund 8, we are going to be comparing how frequently each VCA disagrees with the rest of the lot, and experimenting with the first iteration to see how that settles in. So for example, like if you are agreeing in general, like let's say 90% of the time or more, then you're eligible for full rewards as such. If it happens that it's like 3/4, well, I think that the rewards were like the 5/6 of it. And then like, let's say if it's less than, what was it, less than 60%, for example, where would be the case that somebody just says yes across the board, well, that would automatically disapprove them for actually getting any rewards and any reputation ranking alongside. So it may not be perfect as such, but I think it's the first stepping stone in actually preventing those extreme cases. And I think what we also need to recognize is that something like that, we need to see how it plays out in practice. So to see whether that's sufficient or not, and whether we need to push that lever in different direction, or maybe introduce something more more dramatic in order to cope with somebody who just clicks everything as a yes or approve. So if you do that, you can certainly do that in the current round as a vCA, but you're risking of actually losing the rewards if they're not in line with the majority of opinion of the rest of the vCAs, which should sort of come out of the fact that we're using the same CA guidelines and the process as such. So just wanted to ask if that's being considered in line of the conversation. Navid.
I think Lucio wants to go.
Is there a response to that? Is that what you're going to talk about, Lucio? Go ahead. You're up.
Okay, I just want to say what Danny just said. But basically, the logic behind the Alex script, it's really similar to what is implemented now for the vCA rewards. So I think there is we need to consider this like, I don't know, the first experiment, just like Danny said, to kind of addressing this issue that we saw in the last funds. And also consider that the same logic will be applied for the reputation. And in the next funds, this will be another variable that will come into account for the final count of the rewards. And this reputation is based on the same logic.
Okay, makes sense. Is the intention to implement that reward slashing for Fund 8?
Yes.
I think the risk is we've got a diverse group of VCAs. Some mark things more harshly than others. Some look at assessments differently to others. There are particular VCAs who will happily mark things as filtered out that somebody else marked as excellent. It doesn't necessarily mean one or other is right. So it does need that human eyeball post. Just putting a hard and fast rule saying if you disagree 60% of the time, or whatever the rule is, it does need a human eyeball to validate. So whether it's actually if someone's actually gaming a system or there. I mean, I think if we just implement that as a hard and fast rule in Fund 8, we're going to upset quite a few people, I think. Possibly people on this call.
I think that will be the case. It is something that it's already documented and published. The thing is probably it's kind of fine to tune in the right way the parameters for the future, and obviously to test it and see if it is actually effective for everything. I totally hear you when you say that kind of disagree with the majority. It's something that could happen, and probably it's I don't know. It is not implies that someone is trying to game the system, but it's like a lot of things that we are doing. It's just the first iteration of an experiment, and we will see if how the outcomes will be.
Ilya.
Yes, I was thinking that slashing the rewards is a good thing, but I don't believe that's sufficient to control the misbehavior, because if you don't spend any effort on doing your work, then you don't care if your assessments or your work is slashed after that. So what I was thinking is that maybe there is a way to forbid to the VCAs to be a VCA for the next X amount of funds. And this could be like demote the VCA as a regular first time CA And then you have a parameter that you can increase or decrease. And with that parameter, you can make it more important for the vCA to do what's right. And at the same time, it's not final. So if the vCA starts from the level of a CA, he could spend, let's say, 2 funds being a CA and then again become a vCA. So it's not a final thing, but it could be controlled by this, how many funds you should wait until you can become a vCA again.
So you're calling for a harsher penalty on gaming the system?
Yeah.
So that's a possible outcome. Still, let me see if I can summarize what's been said here, and then we'll go to Scott. So what I'm hearing, let's see if I'm going to try to do it in 4th grade language. So we finish out, we look at the results that of the VCAs, and if someone falls far from the collective tree, then we look at that person, and that person then it is on them to substantiate why they have made the decisions that they have. And that process of running the analysis on how everyone has responded and how similar those responses are should have the majority of us reasonably close to each other, give and take some, but there may be outliers, and those outliers are the ones where we just need a little bit of further assessment. That regardless of the punishment for not using integrity in that process, you still need someone to address that at that point. So, and then I'm noticing what Lynn is saying here about proof of life somewhere through the process. So I guess the question is, if we run this and we find those outliers, and that seems like the best place to address it, what is then the process and what is the outcome? Are those two maybe have I summarized it there? Am I missing anything that was? Okay, let's go to Scott here, and then JP, and then Phil.
Just have it's pretty much the same question I've been asking now, feels like for a month, or ever since this deviation script was brought up, is where is the deviation script, and how is it being applied? I have yet to see any documentation on how it's been applied, as well on what, like pre-screened, post-screen, wherever that's at. And I don't know if the slashing, I don't know if any of these punishments, they'll work, but it could possibly place more work on the VCAs as well. And because it depends on how much work, how many assessments have been assessed by the VCAs. And if these people's assessments are no longer valid, then are there enough VCA assessments for those particular assessments for them to go through, or for the community to feel comfortable with that they were properly assessed by enough people? I hope that made sense. That was a lot of assessing and assessments in there. So
Your question that you raised earlier that's still outstanding is, you felt like there was a discrepancy between what you had as far as your outcome numbers and what it showed having the script run when we looked at the document last week. Does that summarize what you're saying?
Yeah, well, that's pretty much it as far as the script goes, and like its application, because the numbers weren't just off a little bit. They were off, like as far as filtered out, they were off by 55%. And that's a significant amount. And that's why I'm asking these questions about the script. Now, it could be a valid script, 100% valid. I don't know, because I don't know its application. That's all. And then at what threshold are we considered outside of the norm as well, and when we're applying this? Because right now in the vCA documentation, or the rewards and punishments, or whatever the document's called, it says threshold T, and that's it. So I agree that we need this system. How we implement it needs to be smart, though.
JP.
Yeah, mine kind of builds on that again, and I apologize to Danny and Lucio for not seeing this before. Normally, I like to see these products in advance, but I'm wondering if one way to kind of resolve it for right now, because again, we're also solving a problem in a very reactive manner at this time when there's not a lot of time left. If there could be some visualization from either the last fund or through this fund about running the script, showing what the outcomes in versus if you don't run the script, and then showing those deviations for people to truly understand, like what Scott's saying, how are you applying this to the process? What are the differences in the outcomes that we can expect from the script versus individuals or the current existing process? And then kind of use that to showcase what people can expect. I still think there's a little bit of confusion, at least in my head, and from what Scott said about how it's applied and then what that actually means for the community. Yeah, I'm totally in for like reprimanding people who are gaming the system. I just want to make sure that we're not weeding out people who may be harsher in their assessments or in their review standards on what they expect is a good versus excellent versus filtered out proposal, which I don't know that this system captures that.
So the script was developed by Alex, and he's recently got too busy to be involved with the continual development of it. So, and I'm not a data sciencey person, so I haven't taken up. I'm interested to see that it exists, but really it needs someone else to grab it and say, here's the script. I've looked over Alex's script, found where I believe he created it and ran it over the last two funds. So when Scott mentions that it's got some issues, it's only just been his personal interest and he's been sharing that into the community.
Yeah.
But at that point, it seemed like an interesting avenue to help with some of the issues that we're having with the vCAs, which is people not participating as intended in the reviewing of the assessment stage. He identified, I think it was 20 or 30 primary participants who did like 95% of the assessments. And that's not an ideal situation. Whatever way we look at it, the fact that such a limited number of people are creating the final QA stage. So it is about creating something. We've got IOG's version in front of us here, I think, which seems to be what's now going to be implemented in Fund 8. So maybe we're at the point where the community-made script can look to develop and iterate on this for Fund 9, given that we now have a Fund 8 process kind of outlined that we're going to be participating under. I'm not sure where we stand now, but the other thing is that if someone wants to take up that script and check it over, it is on a GitHub account. We can find where that is. And it probably needs just some checking over to make sure that Alex's logic is correct in his script. That's probably where that's up to.
Danny, based on this document, is your team or one of your developers developing a script?
I can reply to that. It is the IOG team. This is the script that was developed to basically calculate the rewards for the vCAs. So just to clarify, this is not the Alex script that we will using for this. It's another development who started in parallel. And this reputation and rewards model that you are seeing is based on the research team. So it's kind of the Alex from the community came up with a similar concept solution to what IOG was working on internally.
Would it be worth running them both in parallel though, or would it be better just running the one that that seems to be implementable at this point?
I think if it is ready and usable, the Alex script, I think there is merit to test them out in parallel and compare the results. And also, as JP said, probably compare with the old system. It's something already, the data and the scripts are already there. So it's kind of only, we can just basically run everything and see what is the best outcome. And it is always useful to have multiple data points to compare. But as for now, just to clarify that this is the official version for Fund 8, and the script is not the one that Alex created.
Let's go Dimitri and then back to you, Lucia.
Sorry, it's my first time being a CA in this fund, and I'm very excited to meet you all. I have to say that what was said here about the vCA game in the system is very worrisome, and so a proposal how to fix it across my mind is, could we just audit all the vCAs and have it sort of a chance of 20% of getting caught, and if caught, then they get slashed completely and lose the ability to participate in future rounds. Something sort of fairly simple to run scripts. That was my suggestion. I don't have anything else to add for now. I mean, just to add. So the script is I guess was developed with good intentions. My concern there is that somebody, I think this was said here already, somebody rating an assessment as good or excellent, and someone else rating it as false or inadequate, can be right in their own right, and facing one against the other doesn't really make sense purely from a quantitative point of view. Just different views of the world. But if you go and then try to just ask those people to justify the motivations behind those ratings, then they have to produce something meaningful based on which the rest of the vCAs could vote, or if IOG holds the pen on the funds, the IOG could decide. It's just yeah, I think purely just facing excellent and good versus falses is doesn't bring to light the fact that people can have different opinions and be valid at the same time. Whereas an audit of say couple of assessments from each of the vCAs is not trivial, but assuming that a vCA does 50 assessments, if he does it randomly, just as a X on all the lines in an Excel sheet, it should come out pretty quickly if somebody's doing that consistently. I think the problem here is not the vCA cheating on one or two assessments. It's somebody is doing malice on across all the proposals. That's the one that you really want to catch first.
Yeah, so I'll make space for a response to that before I say anything. Scott or Phil, is your hand up in response to what Dimitri is saying?
No, I have two more points, just short points.
Okay, Phil.
No, that's right. I got distracted. I forgot what I was going to say.
So yeah, so the goal of this here, and by and large, this is a conversation about creating integrity for the system and creating ways to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and making sure that that the proposals are being fairly assessed and the voters have the right information. So far and away, the group of vCAs is exercises integrity in this process. And so it's not about disagreement as much as you might have someone who, and we had some examples where the actual number of most people were in a range for good and excellent, and some people were far away. Maybe they were 80% when everyone else was closer to 20%. So it does show people who are dramatically out, and that's one of the things that this will find. And what we're intending here is to create a process that has even continuously more transparency and more evaluation. So this rewards and reputation, to JP's point, is new, and this has been created in response to this problem. So this was a fun 7 cents problem, and now it's being applied. So it could also be that the origin of this discussion was from previous after town halls, when we were talking about how do we make sure that we create a sort of a fortress of a process so that gaming can't happen and so that people can't come in with nefarious intentions. And it may also be that the developments that we have here we feel are sufficient, and we don't need to add to it before we see what it works, so that we can have proper learning. So I put that out there as well. The idea for having a group that would be a little bit of an arbitration group was mostly so that if we find those super outliers, there is someone to make judgment about that who is not the people who are pointing to that as needing judgment. Is that helpful? So it's also on this group to say, we think this is sufficient and we're going to run with it here. And I'm not hearing anyone say that we need to add a lot more to the initial flagging because we have the similarity tool. And it also could be that we're not needing, if we're in agreement about how the script runs, maybe we don't need a body for either of these, and it becomes something we talk about once we see how this goes. So I put that out for consideration, and then I kick it back to Scott and then James.
Sorry, can I just quickly, I remember what it was, Dimitri.
Go ahead.
I believe some of this research comes back down to what's called prediction markets. So the idea that when people are making decisions, if you get a crowd to decide and say which side they bet on a coin toss, for instance, and you reward the ones that go it right, that's kind of what's happening here. So if we're looking at the body of VCAs are making a decision on whether it's good, excellent, or filtered out, then it's the ones that have correctly identified what the group decided are the ones that are getting rewarded for doing that. So it's called prediction markets, and there's research into those operations. Quite interesting stuff.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, I just but then you'd have quite a few. You might just have a few who have a very different view of the world, and they would vote completely against the median, and they might be valid as well. So you are rewarding the ones that's sort of a bunch.
There is an objective set of guidelines that CAs are requested to follow, right? So,
Sure.
and we as CAs are reviewing the assessment to those guidelines. So in a way, there's not a subjective measure here. It is, is the assessment in line with the guidelines? Is it good in line with the guidelines? Is it excellent, or is it not in line with the guidelines? That's what we're doing.
Right. I'm not gonna argue much further. It's my first time, so I appreciate everything I'm taking out of this. So,
that's okay.
It's true, and it's true, and that's a really solid point. So anyone who is this is not. First of all, it's meant to identify, and then not to automatically reject, but to create just an awareness so that it can be addressed, or the person can be addressed in order that they can speak for that. So Scott, go ahead.
2 questions. The first one's to Lucio or whoever can answer. As far as IOG script, has it been ran before or is it in beta? And then the next question I have is, is there any method that is used to identify vCAs who collude and potentially share their spreadsheet with another vCA? That way they can increase their opportunity for rewards. And also, anyway, yeah, basically collude and gain more rewards with doing half the work. And thank you.
I can reply to the first question. It will be officially used in Fund 8, but it was tested for a lot of time. I think there is also probably some testing in the repository itself. I don't know if the repository is already open, but probably it makes sense to publish the script because everything it will be open source. So, and also considering that the vCA's files will be also public, basically everything will be allowed to run the script and verify the output. And to reply to your second point, I think it's really interesting and maybe it makes sense for the next iteration to create some similarity for the vCA's files, CSV, and maybe, I don't know, outline in some way some subgroups that act in some strange manner. It is really clever, but maybe it makes sense to think about it.
Also about the second point that you had, Scott, Door some time ago, and I keep bringing it up, and I'd like to explore it, was Door brought it up and said that there is some bias in group decision making is actually a good thing. And he shared a paper. I do have it around the place. I'll pop it into the chat somewhere or momentarily. It wasn't. It was small groups operating with shared information, creating agreements, I guess, led to better outcomes from the group decision making. And I think we haven't got to the point where that's being discussed at the moment. vCAs are expected to operate in isolation, except maybe pointing out various assessments that they feel require attention. But I would love to see the fact that we could introduce that paper in some way, but we're not ready to do that yet. But hopefully one day we might be able to experiment with it.
I've read a similar paper. Thank you, Phil and Lucio.
James, trial by fire.
Hey, yeah, I think the purpose of this script obviously is to address the problem of people who are sort of blanket assessing. I mean, there's still going to be outliers who are doing a good job. So is there any way of sort of measuring the correlation of their results? So, if you're following a sort of laid out criteria, you might always vote a position below or above the majority. It doesn't mean that's not valid. So, as a stage on from the script run, which is going to flag these individuals up, is there a way of then checking the correlation against the rest of the results? So if they're consistently one below the average, that's still valid and they shouldn't have their reward slashed. Whereas if it's just a random vote, then you can sort of identify that it's not being done in a thoughtful way. Is there any way of doing that? Because if you've got good genuine vCAs who they get their rewards slashed, then you're going to lose good vCAs.
Well, there's not an anonymity issue. So these people, if someone falls in that category, there's the opportunity that we then, so the last resort goal is, there's not an intention that people don't get rewarded for their good work, or that they or that we put people in an outlier category are necessarily doing so intentionally. So the intention is to identify and make sure that we do our due diligence in checking. So that's an important consideration, because we were trying to avoid the gaming of the system, not the difference in opinion. But go ahead, Phil.
And that goes back to this concept of the arbitration group. And we could do a simple implementation without too much worry, where, because VCAs are public figures, essentially, they're not anonymous. Like Lynn mentioned earlier, we've been discussing this concept of proof of life, right? Across the Catalyst project, there's various proof of life opportunities. So if you're a funded proposer, you present yourself, you present your proposal. In order to start getting the funding, you present yourself and prove that you're a real person, that you know how to interact with others, similar to what William was discussing, I guess, earlier, but at a later stage than where he's suggesting we implement it. We could look to implement that in the VCA process, in order, if there is question already with, like Naveed said, he identified some questionable operators. That there's one particular one from last fund that definitely appears to just be such an outliner that almost certainly he shouldn't have been rewarded, but they probably were. But if we then call them to just a meeting of the peers, of us, of the VCAs, the participating VCAs, and say, we're requesting you to attend a proof of life session so that we can present to you and discuss with you various things. So the first step would be, if they don't present themselves, well, then they lose their opportunity for reward. And we can include that in the guidelines. And if they do present themselves, then it will be up to the people who are present, the VCAs that attend, and present with various aspects of evidence to discuss amongst themselves and come up with a solution. I don't know if that could be an easy way to do this. And it might solve some of those things you were mentioning, but good.
It certainly gives some accountability.
Yeah. And that's kind of like this concept of the proof of life for the ones that are the outliners who have done a lot of participation, but maybe questionable participation, because some of them definitely have gone out and done a hell of a good job. And like William said, if you present yourself, show your face, discuss, that adds a lot of credibility. Yeah. And if you're not willing to do that, it does the opposite. So we could implement that quite easily and just attend an after town hall session, attend a called upon VCA session. Does anyone have any? I mean, I guess a lot of discussion can happen, but part of all this is that we want to kind of look to implement some stuff in Fund 8.
Is it as simple as an if-then? If someone falls in the outlier category, then in order to substantiate, they need to, if this happens, then this will happen. And this will, can we create like a chain of events kind of a thing that we don't need to have a lot of bells and whistles for? Just exactly what you're saying. If this happens, then we will form a task force, and the task force will meet with the person, and rather than it being the VCAs who don't agree versus the one VCA who doesn't agree, we have a group of people say, how did you come to these conclusions? And we evaluate it, and then a decision is made. And if no one falls in the outlier category, then we don't need to form the thing. But if that does happen, then we have a process. I think we need to put something in forth, because we can anticipate that this may happen from our historical experience, and because the tool doesn't solve this particular issue, we need to have something that we can put forward to say, here's how we're planning to solve it if it happens. This is just my initial thought.
Mainly because it needs to be communicated. We can't. One of the reasons why we couldn't execute anything on the outlier VCAs in the last fund is because we didn't write down what we were going to do. We didn't communicate to the participators that if you do this, you're expected to do this. Right. And so that this discussion that we're all here for is to try and pinpoint some actual actions that we can put into drafted the vCA document for Fund 8 and implement it and get some consensus from the people who are attending, who are listening, who are participating. So I guess, does anyone have any major objections to the fact that if you're an outlier, that you can be asked to present yourself, and if you don't, then you're not eligible for funding, and if you do present yourself, then the community members who are interested can come and question you and request further information about your process. Does that make sense? And is there any major objections to such a thing existing?
I have a major objection that if the VCAs are judging another VCA, that's a conflict of interest. So that means that the judiciary group should be outside of the VCA circle and is not allowed to be a VCA.
Right. Yes, I remember you brought this up before as well. So but the question is do we have enough time? Can we experiment with it in Fund 8 and then iterate on it because of that worry? Or is that a stopper that says we can't proceed in this manner because there's this too big a conflict of interest? Because that conflict of interest, of course, is that if you can preclude someone from possible rewards, those rewards will go to other VCAs, and that's a clear conflict of interest. So, but can we assume that VCAs are participating as intended until otherwise identified in that process? What do you think?
Well, what I think is that we can take the group from the CAs, but only if this group is responsible to be the judge for the VCAs only if they are brought to quote unquote justice due to the difference in their assessments discovered by the algorithm. Right? Because if the algorithm discovers that somebody is 80% off than anybody else, then this could be decided from the CAs. But then this group cannot decide if a CA has a problem with a flagging of his assessment from the VCA. He has to have a place to complain about that. And then we cannot take that group from the CAs. Or maybe we can, but they cannot judge on their own flagged assessments.
But I think the CA process is already taken care of, because the VCA, there's no VCA deciding a CA's assessment. It's the group choice of whether it was filtered out or not. So I don't know whether I'd agree that the CA needs a recourse for a filtered out assessment.
Yes, I agree with you. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, so in this case, it's only what we're discussing right now for Fund 8 is a VCA. If a VCA is outside of the bounds of the norm, that's what we're looking into here. And what can we implement beyond what IO's already discussed? Can we implement a proof of life discussion conducted by VCAs? And to keeping in mind that there is a conflict of interest in doing that.
Nadia, isn't that the discussion you took to the circle, and they agreed to be the task force or the court of arbitration or whatever they're calling it?
They suggested that we make a task force because some of the circle are also VCAs, and that is what has originated. So in this previous document here that we have, I think this might actually be, if we could look at, here are some ideas for the selection of the task force members. So it could be Catalyst Circle plus IOG. It could be, there's some different considerations, a randomized selection of CAs and VCAs who did not appear on any of the lists as assessors or proposers, collection of Catalyst stakeholders. So I think that this is a very important thing to figure out. And to Ilya's point, I think it's tough to, I understand there's a balance between reality and perception as well here, because if you have a group of VCAs able to make a decision that another VCA is eliminated, I understand that it's negligible, but I think it will raise community flags, and probably should, that you have a group that would benefit from discluding someone, making a decision on whether to disclude someone. I think it has to be a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, less that particular group and more filled with other people, but I don't know exactly who those people are, who those stakeholders are. So I think it's really important. The part of this is transparency for the community as well. And we can't have a situation where you get to make a decision on someone's outcome where you would potentially benefit from it, no matter how negligible that seems like it would be. Dimitri.
Yeah, I really like the idea about the proof of life. I was just going to suggest a way to mitigate or partially mitigate this conflict of interest is to have the ones who actually hold the pen on the funds decide. So the group of VCAs holds this review and challenge session, but the decision actually comes from if it's Daniel Riva or someone from IOG who makes the decision. That way you create the process, you deliver the process, but you take yourself away from making the decision and mitigate the conflict to some extent.
I don't understand.
Obviously, you can influence the questioning, which would still raise some flags, but the yes or no is not VCAs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the proof of life point. I mean, if somebody can write a good enough artificial intelligence that can judge and assess the assessments better than human, I'm all for it. So I don't really care about the proof of life thing.
I think the creator of that would come and present themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that would be okay. If they said, look, here's my AI, here's the work that I did. Hopefully it's open source so someone can check through it or something like this. I don't know, maybe that then opens things up. But
okay, I agree.
I think there's still a person behind everything. It's just, I mean, we've currently got, there was some Vietnam group that was pulling people to do CA assessments without telling them anything about Cardano and Catalyst and this sorts of thing. So there are, I mean, it's slightly different, but this thing's going to keep morphing into something so that if we, there's a concept called web of trust, right? Where people get to know each other and start to trust each other. So proof of life is kind of a part of that says, I'm a person, I'm here trying to do the best I can. Maybe I don't always do so, but at least I'm here and I'm participating as intended to the best of my ability. And I guess that's what the proof of life offers.
Someone needs to be able to stand for the work that they've done. That's the point. Someone will say this is how the work was done and why, and it needs to be able to be constructed, deconstructed, and still hold weight. So
if a VCA is like an outlier, shouldn't it, they should be notified of that, and then it should be up to them whether or not they want to challenge that through that proof of life, like Phil was saying, like get in front of your peers and however it's done. But if they don't challenge it, then that's it. I mean, they should know the consequences, though. It shouldn't just be like you didn't show up, now you can no longer be a VCA.
We need to set forth the if-then. We need to set forth an if-then as preparation, and then allow people to go through it. And I think this is really this is such a strong discussion, and I know it's a long discussion, but really it's like, nice job everyone for hanging in there and continuing to put input into it. What I'm hearing, and can we, is there a consensus that what we need is just simply a process by which we can evaluate and provide the any outlier with a fair opportunity to represent themselves. And then we need to provide a group of people, or maybe not a huge group, but we need to provide a way for that to happen such that there's not conflict of interest and that there's outcomes we can expect. Either they can validate what they've done and they did a good job, and we say, okay, you didn't necessarily agree, but you did good work and you followed it and you've done it according to this vCA guidelines, or you, for whatever reason, good or bad, have not done that, and therefore these will not be counted, but there was a due process by which that was evaluated. Do we think that that's what we need here? Is there agreement on that? And if there is, can we start to put it together here? And
Sounds sensible.
It sounds sensible. I think we do need to just dissect the IOG document just to understand at what point you become an outlier. So 10%, 20%, 30%. Because at the moment that document says we're slashing rewards. If you're 10% out.
I think, like Lucio said, though, we can run our own vCA process in the guidelines, say the Alex script that outlines what an outlier is. Like, we don't need to look to IOG's script. That can be sorted out with the reward system and the reputation system that I've developed, but we can actually run the script ourselves. I mean, like I said, we need someone to be able to hold up that script.
Yeah, I think so, but I think what I heard earlier was the reward slashing based on the IOG script is going to be in place for Fund 8. It is going to be implemented, irrespective of us running the Alex script or having any other discussion.
I think it's a classic IOG where it's going to happen whether we think it shouldn't or not, and we can look to Fund 9 to change it at this point. Unfortunately.
Yeah, just to be fair, like, this conversation about this document has been out and about for quite a while. I think I just looked at the Telegram when I first shared in this format, and I think it's been since March 11th. So I just would like to push back. And I know you mean all well, Phil, but it's not like no longer in a sense that it's just like our way or highway, but it's been sitting there for a while awaiting some of those comments. And I know we're quite extremely busy. And yes, I can confirm that, like, we're going forward with this one, and we're just trying to see how that settles in, and based on those outcomes. And also, as Lucio said, and a couple of other great ideas, that we can run other scripts in parallel, see how they compare, maybe even to look at the previous funds if there is a compatibility of data, so we can have a very good understanding of spatial awareness of like how these different things may have worked out. Maybe we can also do that for the current one as well, that like we apply this script and we apply Alex's or something else. But we still need to have a clear decision path so that we keep on moving forward. So we know, like, the one that the IO has put forward, like that's the one that we're rolling with it. I think it's still quite forgiving. I see John made a very good comment about, that maybe the deviation about 10% might be quite common, that he had a bit like a 19% from the crowd or something like that. But I think like the slashing is quite forgiving, just to see like how that works out, this fund, so that we can catch those outliers, but still allow for proper work to be done as such. And then we can iterate on it. But I think it's an improvement on the state that we've been before. And I think the goal is to bring that incremental value of moving our needle in generally right direction, rather than getting everything perfect. Because I think the drive and everybody's passion is just to get everything right and get all of those possible scenarios. But just given the resources that we have on all ends in this process, we still need to move forward with some sort of MVP's incremental value, so that we can sort of see how the system reacts or not. And it's fully open to discussions and whatnot if we find out that things don't work, or if there's things we can implement from the discussions coming up, just like today. And they're quite fantastic, by the way. So thank you, everyone.
Dan, do you have a way to deal with someone who doesn't agree with the outcome?
So that's the last paragraph to it. And it was like alluding to the comment I put in the chat as well, that's basically, I think, what sparked the initial conversations when we had with Nadia and everyone else, that would be a great pilot to see like, what is it that we can actually work on? It was one of those few areas that I think the community's involvement needs to come in a shape and form as it did today to start discussing these things. So it's not only pushed from one end on our side. And I think it was also sort of suggested in those commitments, what are the areas that IO can drive, like those things, and what are the different things that the community can drive, and what are the things we can do collectively together. And that dispute resolution and figuring out what are the avenues for the vCA process, right? Like we haven't talked about the CA because I think that brings a lot of complexity, and I don't think that's actually viable for Fund 8 to have that sort of education for a C8 if they disagree with the stuff. But I think we can start playing with some very simple version to the tune of what you guys and gals were discussing about the vCAs, right? Like if somebody is marked as an outlier and they have an issue with it and they want to challenge it, what the process can we offer them in this pilot version that could test drive that? And maybe they don't get the answers, or maybe they don't get the outcome they would hope for, but it allows us to see collectively what is at play and how that actually, played out, and whether that's sufficient or whether we need to look into some different options in terms of that. So.
Okay. So Nadia, do you mind if I go ahead? Or?
Please. Mm-hmm.
So Ilya, your main concern with this was the concept of conflict of interest. I did post many posts there. Something I wrote in Telegram earlier today about that. Currently, I don't see them as conflict of interest. I see them more of, what did I say? Combined interests. So the fact that the vCAs have a direct interest in it, I would prefer to imagine that the participating vCAs in that process aren't there to try and increase their rewards. And if we think about it and take it from that position until otherwise proven, I think that's fair enough.
I agree with that.
Yeah, does that solve that for now? Your
for
concern?
now, I agree with that. I'm just saying for the future, this should be refined.
Aware of it, yeah, for sure. So if we then look at trying to get to a result of all this, is there any other major concerns with? So what I would like to see is that an event is called. No specific task force members are identified, but there's a community call to say, if you're an interested party in this matter, which is these outlying vCAs, please attend something like this, right? That there are people in this group, in this chat right now, that have done analysis of the vCA process and could present their work in a group setting to an outlier to ask for an explanation of how that's happened. And that outlier can then discuss and inform us of their thinking of their process and how they participated. And then we as the group present can discuss the outcome of that. So that's how I imagine would be the easiest way to implement something. So instead of having any specific members, have a call to action of interested parties. And this is just for Fund 8. For Fund 9, we can look into other things, but that's my suggestion. That's how I'd like to see it happen. So let's discuss for that.
That sounds good to me.
I like that too. The question will come then, who decides?
Those that are present.
All interested party will decide.
Okay.
So it could come down to literally a vote. And if it's a tied vote, it goes in the favor of thing, or we could have 2/3 majority, whatever. We could just literally discuss it right now. Is it full majority, half, 2/3 majority, whatever makes sense. But those that are present, interested parties, they decide together.
Scott.
Yeah. So, yeah, I kind of agree with Phil on that, but I do think we need to have a minimum threshold at least, and also, like an agreed upon percentage as far as who's yay or nay. The other concern I have is the dissemination of this information itself. If it is only posted in Telegram, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't spend a lot of time in Telegram because finding information, unless you're on there, like if that's your main communication tool, if it's not, then you lose information. So, I mean, that's my concern as far as how do we inform the community of this, like, recall, so to speak, or this call to arms.
Can we put it as just a procedural thing, like we have the community advisor after the assessments, this, could we have it in the vCA guide and say, in the case of this is what's going to happen, kind of a thing, Naveed?
Yeah, I think that needs to be documented, that process and the practical process of who communicates and how we communicate. So that the issue we had in Fund 6 and Fund 7 with trying to get hold of a vCA and trying to challenge them is one, they stuck fingers up at us and said, who the hell are you? I'm not talking to you. And so that IOG is the only true source of contact. So their email they put in idea scale is the point of contact to the vCA. So it needs IOG to either share those emails or contact them on behalf of the task force.
Okay.
And we just need to document that in the vCA code.
Phil, do you think, since you have sort of scoped this out in your mind and because you have a lot of content in the guide already, do you think you could put this in like a little bit of a draft form within the guide? And then that we'll all agree, I know we gave ourselves a tomorrow morning, but could we do maybe like, what if we did, tomorrow's Thursday, so what if we did tomorrow at like 10 UTC, 10 p.m. UTC or something like that? So that everyone would have a chance to look at it. We could weigh in on it and come to a consensus and add comments, and then at least have a written, like, digestible process for this moving forward. And that could put a button on, we have these great new tools, the tools will work, the tools have expectations, and this will create that little extra bit of a opportunity for us to understand how we address it and for that person to understand how they will be addressed. Does that feel like a doable takeaway here?
Just to clarify real quick, for those dispute resolutions, I understand that we wouldn't be actively seeking out and investigating every edge case, and it would be only brought forward if somebody raises an issue that they want that to be addressed, right? Because I also want us to be mindful of like how to scale these things. So as long as it's in a way that we give somebody an opportunity to challenge the decision, but I don't think we have a capacity to go and inform everyone about like, oh, these are that. So, and I would assume that as a vCA, you are participating actively in the process, that probably comes with an expectation that if there's results are out, you understand. And if you disagree, then you're able to engage because you know where to seek that engagement through that suggestion that, you know, that we would formulate and perhaps use as a guidance for the dispute resolution. And maybe in the future, and I just threw an idea in the chat earlier, is to ensure that not everybody just goes and raises their hands, because again, that creates a lot of workload. So thinking about scaling this down the line is that perhaps in order to actually bring a matter to that, maybe you need some other humans to sort of like agree that, okay, that seems weird, and you have some case, you know, that you can bring forward to some task force that could form around that as well, which could be a very natural filtering option, just simply through the means of a petition, you know, like, hey, get another 2 or 3 humans at least agree with you. And it could be prescribed, like, who could that be or something like that, just so that we don't have a spam like that. Everybody will just challenge something just simply because they can. And I'm just looking at it from what I'm seeing in different parts of the ecosystem. If there are no checks like that, it can be quite overpowering, and maybe that's not needed in this version, but something to think about down the line, how to streamline the process. So really just the real cases that need the attention and energy of everybody to get involved.
Yeah, I agree. Danny, do you agree we'd need IOG to initiate that discussion with the vCA?
Sorry, meaning?
If we flag an outlier that we'd like to speak to, the only way we can officially get hold of them is through the email that you're.
Yeah, I think initially that's a good place to do so. Maybe then we need to also think about, and then in a sense of like all the other conversation we're having with the D-reps and whatnot, perhaps we'll be able to do and have like a vCA profiles that could be living, that there will be a way to really connect with these people, that they have some publicly available information that you can like reach out to them. It may not necessarily be email, it may be some other different version, but we would have a public database, maybe as a part of a proof of life that allows for that by communication. And that would be sort of like used for communicating like the results and the invites and everything, which we sort of assume that people are checking in. And that there may be some kind of just like a CA address that everybody would need to make a spam address or something like that if they wanted to preserve extra privacy or whatnot. But initially, I think that's totally reasonable, as you said, Naveed. But down the line, again, I'm thinking maybe that warrants some creation of vCA profiles or something along the side as we mature the system as such.
Makes sense.
Okay. So
can I just one other minor gap? So we spoke about running, let's call it the Alex script that we keep referring to. It's written in Python. We need somebody who knows how to handle these Pythons. And he's going to share his script on Friday. I spoke to him earlier today. It needs someone to pick that up and turn it into something.
Where's the share going to happen?
He's putting in GitHub. He said he'll share the link somewhere, probably on Discord or to me, but I can check with him again on Friday. So it'll be in GitHub, and then it just needs somebody who knows Python to pick it up and implement it somewhere.
okay, so we need a call for that still.
Volunteer. I don't see any hands up.
I don't like it.
I can run it. I can run it in a spreadsheet. That's fine, but it'll take me a day to fiddle around with spreadsheets. It's not complicated.
I can't verify it, but I'll definitely run it as well.
Okay, good. Okay, so to summarize all that, we're going to make a process by which someone who wants to throw their hat in the ring for having a second look at them being eliminated from the counted process, that person needs to do their own petition. We're not reaching out to everyone and saying, hey, come over here and talk to us about it. If they want to, they can. There's a process by which they can make a counter argument, and we're going to flesh that out and make it clear, and then form it as needed with the communication going through the email via IOG Phil.
So I think I see there's a push and a pull into this task force, as we're calling it. So as vCA that's missing out on rewards can choose to petition, like build a small petition of 2 or 3 other vCAs that they've convinced that there's an issue, and ask for this task force to rule on this. Or somebody such as Alex's script, or a vCA that's participating, or a community member that's participating in checking oversight, let's call it, of the vCA process, can also run a petition and do a pull and request that a vCA attends this session. Is that's how I'm kind of seeing this unfold? And if that's the case, then we will pass that to IOG to contact that vCA. And if they choose not to attend, then they miss out on rewards. If they do choose to attend, then we'll run the process of those that are present. We'll make a judgment. Are we okay with 50, greater than 50%? Is that like simple majority at this point? Does that make sense? Or
I think that feels good, and we should obviously have an odd number.
Okay. At this point, I always like to ask: does anyone have any major objections, or even objections that they can see issues that they can see with what we're kind of coming with. Because it's hard to then, like, it's hard to say, let's vote on this, because I assume that if people are quiet, they in agreement. So that's kind of the way I like to run these things. So if you have issue, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can bring up a couple more, but I don't want to drag this meeting out any longer than it is. And
Well,
that's like, is there going to be a deadline? Is there going to be a deadline for any type of petition? And then is there also a deadline to respond to that petition? That's it.
That's smart, actually. I like that.
Yeah.
So that we don't keep coming back something that somebody brings up, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10 weeks after. So that actually, that makes a lot of sense, Scott. Very good point.
What if we do something like 7 days and 7 days? Because that will put us within the 3-week funding window.
Yeah, we have to do it essentially before we distribute the funds as well. So practically speaking, any time before that, it allows us to actually do the calculation, prepare documents, and ship out those first rewards. I think that's great. So if like 7 and 7 or something like that puts us within the 2-week frame, and I think we're funding in a 3rd week, give or take. It's still a moving target, fund to fund, but
so
that allows us to move.
What's the 7 and 7? Just 14 days, or?
Yeah, 6 or 5 and 5. Yep.
7 days to flag somebody, and then 7 days to respond. We just got to be conscious of time zones, and people are busy, and
reach a conclusion, really, because then we really need to spread out the rewards and move on. So
yep,
I've got one last question about this. And what if no peers show up during this? What if none of the vCA show up to actually provide their input on whether or not this person should be?
You disappeared there, Scott. But I would even suggest that we run it at an after town hall, maybe. I don't know if that's it could cause issues, but at least as the first one, we can, because we're then guaranteed some level of participation, I think.
Yeah, it depends on the time zone the vCA is in. Not everybody can attend it after town hall.
If it's in the Eastern Town Hall, we can send them that way, I think.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. And I think we should maybe have it, I don't know, what do you think? Should we have it recorded?
Yes.
Great. All right, Phil. So you have that written already, is what I'm hearing?
Yeah, sure. It's all.
Yeah, if we can have it formalized within the next day or so that on Friday I can include that information in those emails being distributed, just so that, again, if we have to do something, everybody is clear on what the engagement is, and everybody has that solid information going into the process, so there's no second guessing, and that would be ideal. I'm if I can have it on Friday ready, then that would be.
We'll finalize it end of.
Let's do 10 p.m. UTC tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we're going to include this Fund 8 vCA incentives requirement as a link in the document. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's linked in the vCA draft already.
It is already? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this document is finished. The only thing that also Scott has asked about, and that's a relevant question, we have still a TBD item on the minimum threshold at which we expect the vCAs to be actually rewarded at all. But I think that will very largely depend on Friday, seeing how many vCAs are actually eligible, because on Friday we're going to find out, as far as Mark told me. So because we were looking at understanding how many of vCAs we actually need to have to participate to achieve some kind of good spread out. And I think, who was it, Mike? Let me read his comment real quick. The idea was, for example, that if we have 1,500 proposals and we have 3 assessments per each, which is a 5K, but let's say right now we have about 8,000, how many do we want per each assessment to be? And in that range, calculation was that the minimum would be to at least evaluate 100 assessments as a vCA. I don't know if that sounds too much as a bare threshold or seems reasonable to the group here.
I haven't done that in the past, but
no, I mean, it's just, it's just was looking at how to incentivize to really at least get some kind of a good workload. It would mean essentially that if you review anything less than this number, you will not be rewarded whatsoever. So you need to reach this threshold, and then you start being considered for rewards, and whether that's 50 or 100. But that's the latest the conversation that I saw in the comments, that it could be around 100. We're looking at it like if you invest at least 10 hours, 100 rakings, and you earn $1,000, like that seems like essentially a good outcome.
It makes sense to have that sort of progression because then you start building the quality vCA participation, right? That it makes sense to have it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so that's just for the expectation of where that is, because I know Scott has asked, and I know it's not clarified there yet. As far as all the others, just like we've said, for those thresholds like the K and N, those are not going to be effectively active in this round, but we're going to see how they may be needed in the future as we address one of those points that somebody else mentioned, like somebody, a couple of people assess majority of those vCA outputs. So naturally, in the long run, we want to spread that out a bit. All right, that's me.
I think that's all of us.
Can I just, sorry, Danny, just one point of clarification, coming back to the assessments, so post CA work. So the only pieces that IOG will filter out before it gets to the vCA is a blank assessment, or where somebody is assessing, where a CA is assessed their own proposal. Everything else will be left to the vCAs. Is that correct?
I'll let Lucia confirm as well, but essentially what is the cases you said, but I also think if your output agrees with somebody else's assessment as a copy across different assessors, I think that is filtered out as well, right, Lucia?
Exactly, yes, correct.
So let's say like you as an Navid and Scott work together and all of your assessments are the same, or you've been copy pasting between one another or having like multiple accounts, well, that would invalidate you before it actually gets to the vCAs. What is really cool, sorry?
To the proposer, before they go to the proposer.
Even
So
proposer.
Yep.
Okay, so that sort of like helps us filter out that way. But what's really cool then, the vCA's output on those like similarity scores and all of that, they will be highlighted in a different color, I believe. So that will also ease the work for the vCAs to actually see like, oh, okay, this was flagged by the script, so I can pay special attention to it and it will be highlighted in a different color. So I think there will be a productivity boost as well to a degree where where the AI suggests that you need to pay special attention potentially.
Yeah, so it's across CAs rather than just an individual CA, which is a conversation we had right at the top of this.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking, I think it's backwards as well. Is it that like it's not only the current fund, but also the CA's assessments which were made in the past? So if you try to recycle something that you've used, let's say 3 funds ago, that would be sort of a no-go in a way as well if you were to reuse some of those across different IDs or things of that. So that's important.
One other scenario, so the yes scenario, so that the less than 150 characters, are we auto discarding those?
Yes. This was also discussed with Marek, and we will filter out all the assessments smaller than, let me check. I remember 100 characters, if I recall correctly. I can confirm you tomorrow. So it's like all the one words or short sentences will be already filtered out. And also, again, this filter will happen before the assessments will go to the proposers. So it's kind of also the proposers will not see them.
Perfect.
And just to add, the similarity script will be run. We will create one document within fund date and another one against the previous funds. So you will have basically 2 similarity scripts, similarity documents, not just one.
lots of changes, lots of toys. I'm really curious to see how things change. You know, I don't know, the last round was like turbulent inside and out. And I think also what's really cool that the community is looking at us from the outside in, how we've coped with this. So I think it will be really big test next couple of weeks, how this actually plays out in real life compared to the last fund, and whether we can prove them semi-wrong in a sense that like that's what Catalyst is about, iterating, trying, pushing the boundaries and then adjusting to it. So I would just like to say a really big thank you to everyone who's actually still on this call. I know we were quite a lot before and this went in the distance. Thank you, Nadia, for leading all of that, because it's quite a huge job. And, you know, like, especially, you know, I've done my first CA work in Fund 2. So I think we've come a huge, huge long way. And I think you should be everybody proud for putting in the hours. So I really appreciate you. If people don't tell you enough, everyone on this call, that your work is greatly, greatly appreciated.
Well
Right.
said, Dan. Thank you as well.
Yeah, same.
Your work's very appreciated.
Yeah, it's fun. It's gonna, you know, we're gonna learn a lot. So that's always like a leftover positive outcome at the end of the day. And hopefully we learn a lot of stuff we are happy to learn. There it is. But okay. Great, guys. Okay, so we got 10 tomorrow UTC. Phil, do you want to, we'll just all come in and work on that document together, and maybe we'll make cutoff for comments like maybe like 8 UTC, so we can just clean it up and then have it over to Danny.
I might just ping everyone in the CA channel when I'm having to work on it, and if anyone wants to join a call so we can just discuss things as well as we go through it.
Great.
That might work well.
That's awesome. Okay.
But I'll just have an open mic, I guess, until we see where we go.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. It's quite late here, so I'm going to jump off.